A beauty influencer live streaming with her thousands of followers on TikTok in one moment looked away from her camera and into the eyes of her killer. Valeria Marquez was gunned down on film as she sat in her beauty salon in Jalisco, Mexico, and police are now hard at work trying to figure out who did this and why. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. A 23-year-old social media influencer and model who showed off her hair and makeup to thousands of followers on TikTok and Instagram is now being mourned in Zapopan, Mexico. Shot dead inside of a salon called Blossom Beauty Lounge. Now, some Mexican media outlets have claimed that Valeria Marquez herself had operated the salon. Others say she only worked there. That part remains unclear. But I'll tell you what is particularly chilling is that Valeria posted a selfie from inside the salon on Instagram on May 13th, showing off her outfit for the day. That is the same outfit that she would later die in. Valeria, it seems, often filmed live content for her followers, not necessarily doing anything exciting, but just, going about her day. And at one point in a video on that Tuesday, Valeria recounted a story. She said she had been away from the shop when somebody apparently stopped by asking for her, saying they had a package to give her. So when employees offered to hold on to the package for her, this person, according to her, declined, saying it was something very expensive, so they needed to give it to her in person, and they left. Now, Valeria says on the video that she wasn't going to wait around for the person to come back, and according to the AP, actually theorized at one point that maybe the person had been coming to kill her. And that leads us to approximately 6:30 p.m. that Tuesday, which is when local police say all this happened. Now, despite saying she was going to leave, Valeria's sitting on a live stream, holding a pink stuffed pig in her arms, happy, when someone off camera catches her eye. A spokesman for the Jalisco State Prosecutor's Office told the New York Times that two men apparently pulled up outside the salon on a motorbike, and one of them entered wearing a mask. Now, Valeria said in Spanish, "They're coming." Then a man said, "Hey, Valeria?" She responded, "Yes." And then for some reason, she reached over and muted the live stream, so you can't hear her or the person off camera anymore. But that is when the shooting happened.
Ya viene. Hola. Valeria? Sí.
So we froze in the video, but live stream viewers actually watched this in real time as someone fired a gun at least twice, hitting Valeria in the chest and the head. It is an unbelievable situation. It is incredibly disturbing and chilling. I've never, ever seen anything like this before. And get this, just a few seconds after Valeria slumps over, motionless, someone's seen picking up the phone and turning off the live stream. So far, that person hasn't been identified, but some online have theorized that the woman was an employee or client of the salon, but others have pointed out that she seemed very calm for someone who just witnessed what is essentially a cold-blooded murder. It appears Valeria's TikTok page has been removed, but at the time of this recording, her Instagram is still active. And I talked about how she had a significant following. People magazine citing 149,000 Instagram followers for their TikTok, 114,000 followers. So there are a lot of people looking day in and day out at the life of Valeria. And many people have commented, have expressed their condolences on her photos online. And despite the live stream being taken down, the Jalisco State Prosecutor's Office confirmed to the New York Times that snippets of the video that have been spreading like wildfire online, they are authentic. Now, here's something that's very interesting. The spokesman also said that the gunman asked who it was, like he didn't know who Valeria was. The representative told the AP, with that you can deduce, without jumping to conclusions, that this was a person who was paid. It was obviously someone who came with a purpose. There have been multiple theories floating around social media right now about what might have led to Valeria's apparent assassination, including that a close friend may have been involved in plotting the murder, although we have no confirmation of that or evidence to support that. But so far, the prosecutor's office hasn't commented on these theories at the time of this recording or what might have happened. By the way, actually right before this recording, we found out that another woman, 22-year-old model and also social media influencer, Maria Jose Estupinan, was shot and killed in Colombia when she apparently opened her door to a fake delivery person. So very similar to the allegations and what we're talking about here with Valeria days before. Apparently, there's surveillance footage showing the suspect in Maria's killing running away. Now, according to the New York Post, she had made a prior report for domestic abuse against an ex-partner. Don't know if that's related. Don't know if these cases are related. But my gosh, very strange that we have two women who are doing the same kind of things on social media being killed in very similar fashion. It is just eerily similar. So to talk about the investigation so far, what's next for the legal process once police have their man or men or suspects, whoever these people are, I want to bring in a special guest. I'm joined right now by German Terriquez Cordova, a Tijuana, Mexico criminal lawyer who will give us a lot more insight than we know. Because there's one thing I might know about the law here in the States. I am not as familiar as the law in Mexico. Thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. And welcome to Sidebar.
Thank you, Jesse Weber. Thank you for your trust. And well, I'm here to respond all the questions that you have.
Well, fantastic. Thank you. So first of all, my first question is, what is just your reaction to this? I have to tell you, I've covered crimes all the time. I've never seen someone shot to death on a live stream. I mean, this is something that is truly horrifying. And we watched the video. We didn't play it here. We only showed screenshots of it. It is so disturbing. What is just your reaction to seeing something like this?
Well, Jesse, yes, in Mexico, obviously, we see all the time serious offense like femicide, like murder. But yes, online, see online that femicide, it's obviously it's a surprise in Mexico for us, and obviously all the Mexican community, all the Mexican criminal defense attorney, we are surprised with that facts. And well, we hope that the prosecution and the justice arrives and determines soon who is the suspect and who is the defendant who commits this crime, right?
Hey everybody, this is another Law and Crime legal alert. If you received Depo-Provera birth control shots and were later diagnosed with a brain or spinal tumor called meningioma, you may be eligible for a lawsuit. You see, Morgan & Morgan is investigating claims that patients weren't properly warned about this risk. It's free to check, just takes a few minutes, and you don't pay unless they win. So scan the QR code on screen, click the link below, or head over to forthepeople.com/LCDepo to see if you qualify. I don't know if you saw this other story, but it just came out. There is a 22-year-old model and social media influencer from Colombia who was shot and killed, apparently opened her door to a fake delivery person. Are we seeing a lot of violence against social media people?
In Mexico, it's increased, I don't know, maybe 1 year ago, violence for social or for influencers. We see an examples in Culiacan. Maybe you know about that. But yes, it's strange for us, for Mexico, to see the violence against the influencers. Yes, it's strange for us, and yes, I think, in my point of view, it's that violence it's increasing for the influencers, right?
When you look at Valeria's story, does it look like the killer or killers didn't know who she was because they asked, it seemed to be, is she there? And that kind of gives clues as to what might have happened here. Do you agree?
Well, yes, it appears the shooters, it doesn't know the victim. But well, in this moment, we review the prosecution, media, and the press conference. And I think in this moment, there's no suspect in this case. In social media, we we read about persons, but I think, in my point of view, is that the shooter it doesn't know the victim.
Did you think it was strange, the woman who seemingly picked up the phone right after the shooting? At first, you don't know who this person is, and I'm not entirely sure who this person was, but that was very, very strange, no?
Yes. The community in Mexico, the point of view for the community, it's strange that the person who takes the cell phone, uh, it seems like take it easy. I don't know if that is the word. Wait, take it easy, take the phone, and well, that seems that maybe she knows something about that, right?
Right. Yeah, it's strange. I want to ask you about the legal system in Mexico. So, what does it take to arrest somebody? Here in the United States, we have probable cause to make an arrest. What does it take to arrest somebody? What kind of evidence do you need to make an arrest?
Yes, Jesse. In Mexico, it's similar than the US. In Mexico, we need a probable cause to arrest someone. When the prosecution has evidence, obviously the femicide, mm, the prosecution has evidence for the femicide, for the crime, for the offense. But the prosecution needs to go for more proofs for the suspect. And when the prosecution has this evidence, he's going to go with the judge to go for a warrant order. And when the prosecution get the warrant order, he can arrest the person who is the suspect in this case. But yes, it's similar than the US. We need that probable cause, who is it's necessary to go for the first appearance, to the preliminary hearing, right?
Hmm. And we here in the United States, a criminal suspect, a criminal defendant has certain rights when they're arrested. You know, they have rights to due process. They have rights against improper searches and seizures. Is there a Mexican constitution? Do criminal defendants have rights to say, my rights were violated when this arrest happened? How does that work?
Yes, actually, the Article 20 for the Constitution Mexico law established the rights for the defendant. He has a lot of human rights. He knows what he's arrested. He can try to nullify the evidence. How can I explain? Um, if the evidence who is recollected for the prosecution is violent the human rights or the human process, that the criminal defense attorney for the defendant can try to eliminate that evidence for the defendant. But yes, it's similar the human rights for the defendant in Mexico than the US.
You, you had mentioned femicide. Is that an actual charge like murder, or is it a type of murder?
It's like a type of murder. Actually, around 20 years ago, it's not the femicide is not sized in Mexico. The representatives, the congressmen, and the congresswoman in Mexico reformed the law around 20 years or 15 years to incorporate the crime for femicide. And yes, the difference between the murder in first grade and the femicide is that the femicide, first of all, has several penalties, around 40 years to 70 years for jail. But when a person, first of all, needs to be a woman. In femicide, the victim needs to be a woman, obviously. Second one, if the suspect or if the guilty person killed the woman in a hidden place, or if the suspect or if the guilty person is family, maybe husband, or well, This is um, the points that different the femicide for the first degree murder, homicide.
So if it's a stranger, let's say it's a hitman, okay, it's an assassin, would this classify as murder or could this be femicide? And if it is murder, what's the punishment for murder?
The punishment for murder, it depends. Remember that this happened in the state of Jalisco. Guadalajara, Zapopan, it's part of the state of Jalisco. So in Mexico, similar to than the US, we have penal codes in each state. Okay? So in Jalisco, the penalty for murder is for 30 years to 60 years for jail. And femicide, it's 40 years to 70 years for prison. In this case, it's going to be investigated, and I don't have doubt that it's going to be investigated and it's going to be sentenced if the person is found guilty for femicide, because there's a lot of main points that the crime is going to be charged by femicide. The person's surprised the victim with a shotgun, and it's going to be femicide. That I can guarantee that it's going to be that charge.
So if they're looking at 40 to 70 years in prison, do they get parole? Could they get released early?
No, it's gonna be difficult because when the suspect is gonna be arrested, and if he's found guilty in a trial, he's gonna be sentenced. Well, for example, 50 years. And in Mexico, it cites the benefits of the law when a suspect, when the guilty person has the 50% or the 70% for the penalty accomplished, he can go for the benefits for the law. But in this case, in femicide, the law is not prevent that. So my point of view is when the guilty person is going to be found guilty, he's going to be in jail minimum 40 years and max 70 years for jail.
Does it take years for a case to go to trial? So if someone is arrested tomorrow, when could they go on trial in Mexico?
It's okay. In Mexico, the Constitution is not prevent exact timeline or a time that the defendant is going to be on trial, but it's usual that in these cases, in popular cases or cases that the population is interested in, the trial is celebrating around 6 months. Around 6 months when the until or since the person is going to be arrested. Actually, the congressmen and the congresswomen in Mexico, it's trying to reform the law to prevent that the maximum time to celebrate the trial is going to be 4 months. But in this moment, it's not a time that we have to celebrate the trial. But for example, or in the practice law, the trial celebrates around 6 months in these cases.
In the United States, it could take years from an arrest to actually have a trial.
In Mexico too, but in not popular cases. In Mexico, it's so political, the criminal law and the criminal cases, it's so political. So when cases like this, like Valeria's case, it's happening, the prosecution, the judge, the court tries to celebrate the trial as soon as possible.
And I want to talk about the investigation too and what might be happening, but I wanted to also ask you, Is it proof beyond a reasonable doubt to get a conviction? That's what we have here in the United States. Is it similar or the same in Mexico?
Yes, it's equal in Mexico.
Okay.
Actually, maybe you don't know that, but in Mexico, since 2008, reformed the law about the criminal process, and it's similar to the criminal process in Mexico. It's oral, similar to than the U.S., but we don't have jury here in Mexico. Or when the prosecution can prove beyond reasonable doubt, the judge is gonna be the judge needs to find guilty the person. Yes, it's equal in Mexico than the U.S.
And if there's an arrest, does that person make bail? Could they make bail in a case like this or no?
No, no, no. In Mexico, the bail is not working like the U.S. In Mexico, when a person is arrested, the prosecution needs to prove with in front of the judge that the person needs to stay in jail in the process because he's a danger in freedom. Obviously, in femicide, when the person is arrested, he's going to stay in jail. Obviously, for the secure for the victim, because maybe for the maximum penalty for femicide, 70 years. And obviously, with all that proofs and with all that facts, that person who is arrested is going to stay in jail all the process. The bail in Mexico is not working in these cases.
So now let's talk about if there's going to be an arrest. So talk to us about what is happening with the investigation. Do investigators, do authorities, do they look through surveillance video? Are they looking through Valeria's social media activity? Are they speaking to witnesses? What does an investigation typically look like in your country?
Yes, Jesse. Yes, first of all, when the police and investigators arrives to the crime scene, they need to recollect just the videos, the blood in the scene, and well, yes, the prosecution and investigators is gonna try to get the text and information for the social media for the victim, WhatsApp, Snapchat, Messenger. Obviously, the prosecution to get that information, first of all, need to go with the human rights judge because that information is part for the privacy, for the victim, and the judge needs to give a permission for a prosecution to review that information. And yes, obviously, the prosecution and investigators uh, is gonna make is gonna interview witness to review what's happening. It's usual in Mexico that maybe the police has a suspect or yes has a suspect, but first of all, the police it's interview as a witness, and then when the investigation advance, that witness is changed to suspect. It's usual in Mexico, but yes, that is the usual investigation that the police and the prosecution realize in these cases.
Do you think there's going to be an arrest in Valeria's case?
Yes, Jesse. I don't know who, but just because in Mexico, as I explained you before, it's so political. And the governor, the president, everyone is taking care for this case. And obviously, yes, it's gonna be an arrest because in previous cases, when a case it's so political, when a case it's so violent, it's so influential, like this case, the prosecution is arrest someone. I hope that is arresting the guilty guy because
Yeah.
obviously with that evidence and with that information, we can get a sentence on a trail. If the prosecution arrests the wrong guy, we can have a non guilty resolution for the judge, right?
Oh, well, we don't want that. We want to make sure that the right person is ultimately apprehended for such a heinous, disturbing crime. I mean, how often do you see a crime committed actually on tape? It's pretty unbelievable and chilling, to say the least. German Terriquez Cordova, thank you so much for taking the time. Loved having you here on Sidebar, and really appreciate you watching the show as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.
And that is all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.